Modern science has figured out how creativity works in the mind. And by understanding how it works, you can learn to do it better. This is Seiji Ozawa. He's a scientist. In the early 1990s, he figured out how to keep the MRI on while your brain is working. That's an MRI of a thought. And his work and lots of other work since by lots and lots of different scientists now gives us a very good understanding of how thoughts happen in the brain, and especially creative thoughts. Here's how it works. Your brain takes things in from the outside and makes connections. For a creative thought, it takes things in from the outside and makes a new combination. This is very important. For a creative thought, you do not imagine something new. You take in things from the outside and make a new combination. It's a new combination of previous elements. The elements are not new. The combination is new. Let me give you an example. Two very creative guys, right? And their creative idea is called Google. Definitely a creative idea. How did they get the idea? That's our question. Well, that's Page, that's Brin, and here's the third inventor of Google. His name is Rajiv Motwani. He was a professor of computer science at Stanford. Page and Brin were his graduate students. They were working on his subject. What was his subject? No, it was not search. At the time, nobody thought you could make money from search alone. The idea at the time was a portal, like Yahoo, where on one page you have your shopping and your news and your email and your search and your weather, so that you stay on that page as long as possible. And then they sell banner ads and pop-up ads that keep you on the page even longer. Well, what's on the Google page? Just search. 0.13 seconds, you get your result, you're on to the next site. It's the opposite of a portal. Well, at the time of the portal, nobody thought you could make money just from search. So they weren't working on search, they weren't working on portals, they were working on a very academic subject. Data mining. Data mining. They said data mining, as I'm sure you know, is complex mathematical algorithms first applied to retail. Who bought what, when, where, for how much, and you look for patterns in the data. They said, well, let's apply this to e-commerce. E-commerce was starting. It was the late 90s. Amazon and others were starting. Let's see if we can use these data mining algorithms for e-commerce. Very good academic subject. So, Larry Page was working on lots of other things, including that, and for everything he was working on, he used the internet. He was using Alta Vista to search. Remember, before Google, people would always tell you, oh, this is the best search engine, that's the best search engine. Well, for a while, it really was Alta Vista. It was the first one to do an index of every page on the internet, put it on computers, and do a full search. Very powerful. Didn't make any money, but a very good search engine. So he's on Alta Vista searching. This is an Alta Vista search screen, and he noticed something. Who has written your URL on their page? Who has cited you? This reminded him of something. He was getting his PhD. Brin was getting his PhD. Motwani had his PhD. They all knew that academics get ranked according to how many times other people cite you in their footnotes. So if you win the Nobel Prize, you get cited 10,000 times a year by other people in their footnotes. Your rank is very high. Kelly Rothenberg is just starting out. She doesn't get cited very much. Her rank is low. So they said, well, let's rank websites the same way. If lots of people have written your URL, have linked to you, your rank is high. If not, your rank is low. So they cloned Alta Vista on the Stanford computers. They took a data mining algorithm, and they did this reverse ranking. And they had something called PageRank. And what they thought they had at this time was a dissertation topic in e-commerce. Well, what happens is they're using so much Stanford computer space and time that Stanford says, you have to open this up to everybody on campus. So everybody on campus started using it. Everybody on campus came back to them and said, do you realize you've just invented the greatest search engine in the history of the world? And they said, oh, I guess we did. So they switched to that. They changed their goal. They called it Google. They raised lots of investment capital, and they spent it. And they were ready to give up. Why? What haven't I mentioned? How are they going to make money? Well, everyone said it's very simple. Everybody's using Google already. Just sell banner ads and pop-up ads. And they said, well, we can't do that. If we do that, Google will be slow. And it won't be Google anymore, and people won't use it. They really did try to give up. They offered to sell this back to Alta Vista for $1 million. As you certainly know, Alta Vista said no. Page was on the internet again. And he noticed a site called Overture. Overture was a search engine, didn't have a lot of users. They were selling ads. And they were displaying those ads not as pop-up ads or banner ads. They were displaying those ads as search results in a nice little list on the right-hand side. Sound familiar? So they wrote that into Google, and to this day, that's how they make their money. They did not invent Alta Vista. They did not invent reverse links. They did not invent data mining algorithms. They did not invent Overture's ad system. It was a new combination of previous elements. The elements were not new. The combination was new. Let me give you another example. This is a self-portrait by Picasso, the most famous artist of the 20th century of the Western world. This is a self-portrait by Picasso in 1907. This is the style that made him famous. This is a self-portrait by Picasso in 1901. This is not the style that made him famous. So how did he get from here to here? Let's find out. Yes, this is right. What I want to tell you is about the history of art. Everything I know about the history of art. It's going to take about 30 seconds. In the 1860s, the camera gets invented. And the camera throws painters into crisis because they make their living doing portraits and landscapes that people buy and hang on the wall. Well, now the camera can do this much more cheaply. So artists in France save the day by inventing Impressionism, where they break the scene down into little brushstrokes, which the camera can't do. And by the use of the brushstrokes, they can give a different impression. They can make it bucolic. They can make it cheerful. They can make it mysterious. Very successful, saved painting. But try this in a museum. Stand back from an Impressionist painting. If you stand back, it sort of looks like a photograph. It's realistic in color and shape. Now, that's not exactly Impressionism, but from the back of the room, it sort of looks like a photograph. You have to stand really far back for that to look like a photograph. So this is really the big change. This is now modern art. But that's not the first one. This is the first breakthrough painting of modern art. Matisse, 1906. It's called Happiness of Life. Matisse was very proud of his knowledge of previous art. In his writings and his interviews, he'd tell you where he got all this from. Notice it's very flat. It's not little brushstrokes. It's big patches of colors. He called them volumes of color. It's very distorted. You'd never think it's a photograph, but still you recognize people, trees, grass. It's semi-abstract volumes of color. And he told us where he got it from. This is Cezanne. You can see a very similar subject. Notice the brush strokes are getting bigger patches, not as big as him. You wouldn't think it's a photograph. It's getting distorted. And Persian miniatures is where he really got the idea of the volumes of color. He's very proud of this combination. So this is a big hit in the spring of 1906 at an exhibition in Paris. Picasso is 12 years younger. He goes to see it. He notices the crowd. He studies the painting. And he notices that Matisse is the first modern artist to get a contract with a big Paris gallery. So, for the first time, he goes to visit Matisse. First time he visits Matisse, nothing happens. Second time he visits Matisse, Matisse is carrying an African sculpture. Now, we don't know which one exactly, but you recognize the style. It was a time of French colonialism, so African sculpture was coming to France, and artists were collecting it and studying it for very technical reasons. So Picasso looks at Matisse, looks at the sculpture, and says, let's go out to dinner. So they all go out to dinner. Picasso, Matisse, and the African sculpture. Picasso, through dinner, looks at Matisse, looks at the sculpture. Picasso's carrying it. Looks at Matisse, looks at the sculpture, looks at Matisse, looks at the sculpture. The end of the evening, he gives the sculpture back to Matisse, goes to his studio and starts painting. And we know what painting he started painting that night because he had a roommate named Max Jacob. And Max Jacob wrote a memoir, and in that memoir, he tells us exactly what painting Picasso started painting that night. And that painting is still the single most famous painting of modern art in the Western world. Demoiselle d'Avignon, which is Matisse's happiness of life plus African sculpture. And that's how he got his style. It was a new combination of previous elements. And now you know how Microsoft started. And now you know how Steve Jobs developed the first Macintosh, which changed the computer's world. You know now how Alice Paul got American women to vote. You know now how Martin Luther King got the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And now you know how Muhammad Yunus started Grameen Bank. But these are not the characters I'm most interested in. My real topic is you. I hope you see that this is a normal function of the human mind. We're human. We can do it too. Thank you.